Hello everybody, welcome to episode 218 of Show Fever. Today we'll be going over chapter 15 of Haunted Peak entitled Commotion. So this chapter starts off directly where we ended the last one, where we see as Ebihara and Mayu are actually kind of talking here. Also, I forgot to mention, at the beginning of this chapter we got a pretty cool color spread of Mayu, which was cool to see. And so we kind of see as they're talking, and ultimately we see as Mayu brings up the fact that the address that Ebihara had given to her when he was at the inn was actually quite close to where she used to work. And here's where we actually get the backstory with Mayu. And I'm just saying, my theory was right. So we see they get to talking, and she mentions about how about a year ago, her mother had died, and her father was planning to close up shop with the inn. Her father was planning to close up shop, and her brother wasn't really going to help out, so she ended up coming back here. But then she explains that was not the only reason. So we see she then reveals that she was in a relationship with her boss when she was in Tokyo, and how college wasn't really an option for her, and so she ended up going to Tokyo to hopefully make it big, and here she ultimately ended up falling with her boss. So we see then, as she mentions about how she eventually learned that her boss was married, and he had her as his mistress all this time without ever telling her. And the shame is that everyone at the job place knew that her boss had a wife and that she was just acting as a mistress. However, Mayu didn't know this, and no one ever told her because she was the brunt of their joke, which is really tragic for Mayu because, I mean, I know Mayu probably wouldn't have been in that relationship if she had known that her boss had a wife and she was just a mistress to him, but it is tragically not the case. So he continues talking, and she mentions about how her, mother dying and her dad deciding to close down shop was ultimately, or at least she believed it to be, a blessing in disguise. So she took this opportunity to head back as soon as she could get it because she just couldn't stand it anymore after having found out that she was just a mistress to her boss and that she had been everyone's joke in Tokyo. So she headed back, and here now in the, wherever this town is, we see that she was hoping, like I said, to escape from this past of hers. However, just because she told one of her friends, and her friend got to gossiping, as we saw in prior chapters, that now, like, the people within her class, the men of her class are just gossiping around now and discussing this, even though she wants it to be quiet. She wants to escape her past. However, this is not working out for her in this not new town, but the current town that Haunted Peak takes place in. Oh my gosh. So we just kind of see as Ebihara mentioned about how, yeah, that really sucks, and then Mayu mentions about how she doesn't really belong anywhere now because she can't escape her past. And so we see they continue walking, and then ultimately we end up swapping back to Miko. So we know that now this is in the present, technically, because this conversation and walk had happened prior. So we see Miko ends up coming up on the hill on the day it's raining, but neither Mayu nor Ebihara are there. So we see as he looks around, make sure that everything's covered up, and it was in fact covered up. So he then presumes, Ebihara's probably down in his car, so he goes to check on him. We also get to see as Miko remembers seeing Mayu's chest, which is very weird. I don't know why it's become a plot point almost now, because it kind of seemed like a one-off thing, but I guess he's just kind of ashamed of looking, but yeah. So we then see as he walks down the hill and presumes that Ebihara is sleeping in his car. So he goes and peeps in there and sees that Ebihara is just booty out naked sleeping in his car. And obviously Miko's kind of disturbed and kind of, embarrassed by this because he's like, he sleeps in the, no, that's weird, especially when it's on it technically is on private property because Ebihara owns the mountain. But still, it can be pretty visible that he is just naked sleeping there in the car. But yeah, so then after that, we see as Miko ultimately ends up going back up on the hill 3 days after, since it's been raining for these 3 days. So he's ultimately went up on a dry day where it hasn't been raining, and he almost slips on something. And we see that he continues to walk up there, and he mentions, like I said, how it's been raining for 3 days. And as he's going up there, he is greeted by both Ebihara and Mayu. Mayu is now helping Miko and Ebihara to construct the cabin. Now, I don't know how Miko is going to take this because he may possibly feel betrayed that he's lost this individual connection with Ebihara, or he might enjoy the fact that he's found other people who don't really belong anywhere, and he can, relish in this, interaction. And now that Mayu is joining along with Ebihara, I doubt that Ebihara is going to be compelled to tell Miko's parents that Miko is meeting up with a stranger. So, or at least tell Miko to not come up there anymore. So I'm really ready to see how this plays out. Now, also, this chapter made me construct a theory. Now, as we know, the title of the story is Haunted Peak, so we can presume that some type of spirit or something exists within the mountain or upon the mountain. And I know this is kind of fringe, but I was thinking about how possibly Ebihara could not actually be a physical person, because Ebihara, he doesn't really have a connection to this world because he doesn't have a wife. His kid is not his. He has no connection to this planet besides the mountain, the Haunted Peak. And I think he could possibly be some type of spirit which brings those who are, I guess, lost or have no homeland, no connection, don't belong anywhere, and brings them to one point so they can meet and interact and grow to know each other. Therefore, they eventually gain a place where they belong. A spirit of fellowship. Like, he could possibly be some symbol. However, I don't believe that is necessarily the case. I believe Miko is, I mean, not Miko, but Taiki Ebihara is an actual individual who has a physical presence. But it just would be cool to see that in the end, Ebihara never actually was a person. He was a spirit of fellowship that brought everyone together, and just did this out of the fact that in his life he did not have that sense of fellowship. Like, I guess the way he could have become the spirit is possibly he died when he jumped out of the apartment, as we saw in the previous chapter, rather than him continue to live as we presumably see in the current timeline of Haunted Peak. I just wanted to share that little bit of a theory there. So that's all there really was for chapter 15 of Haunted Peak, entitled Commotion, and that's all I really have for episode 218 of Shelf Review. So thank you very much for watching.